Welcome to Greater Christmasville. You read about it in the blog in the section about decorating. Resist the urge to honk for hamburgers, though. Even if you read about it in Traditions, it might hurt my feelings. Okay, so we've invited you here for a very special occasion. I want to announce that starting now, and you can buy copies of my book, Say Uncle, electronically. There'll be places above me in the tabs, and probably also below. There'll be links that you can click on that will take you to those places where the book is available electronically, and you can begin to have even more of me in your day-to-day life. I'm really happy about this. You've probably read some in the blog of the month-long, or I guess it's been about 3 months now, that it's taken me to get the book together and to this place, and I hope that now that we've got the hang of it, we can start bringing out both the sequel to Say Uncle and other works of mine, and make them available in this way as well. Okay, so to mark the occasion, we wanted to first, of course, have you to Christmasville so that you could share in the Christmas joy, and do a little reading from the book so that you can get a sense of what Say Uncle is all about. It sort of worked out in my favor. The delays brought us to this point, but the book actually begins on Christmas Eve, so we're kind of right there. It's the story of a gay man who raises his nephew and how they kind of become a family in their own unusual way in this very unusual culture with all of its opinions about what other people's personal lives ought to be like. Anyway, it's a comedy. That may sound like a serious topic, but it's a pretty lighthearted look. And what I wanted to read today was sort of the first chance that we get to meet Scott. When the book begins, he's an infant, and so a little ways on, he sort of takes up the story. So I wanted to give you a first introduction to Scott and to his Uncle Michael in his own words. So here, without further ado, from my book, Say Uncle, is Scott Riley. My first memories of my uncle are of his nose. When I was young, I'm not sure how young, he owned and operated a small theater during the summer season at the beach. As part of his marketing program, he acquired one of those bicycle-powered hot dog carts that vendors pedal up and down the beach, selling their wares to the greasy tourists caking the shoreline. From his cart, Uncle Michael sold tickets to the theater. Each day, during prime suntanning hours, he piled me into the modified relish tray of the cart, and we went in search of theater patrons. From my vantage under the green and white canvas umbrella affixed to the cart, my gaze fell not where we were headed, but back into the face of the cart's power source, Uncle Michael. It was quite a face. Hat emblazoned with the name of the theater, dark glasses, and about a quart of zinc oxide protecting his nose. The white contrast against tan skin and ebony glasses made his nose float, disembodied, before my eyes. 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, I probably never spent so much time since looking into his face. And I suppose, like a baby duck, I imprinted that face, that nose, on my young mind and carried it forward into life. Like Uncle Michael's nose, my memories of those years of dawning recognition float disembodied in my mind. Vague images and feelings like faces and unicorns in the clouds materialize and dissolve in my memory without design or order. It was a time of fantasy, as are most childhoods, but I tend to think that it was more fantastic than for other children. Maybe everyone feels that way. I guess the world seems magic to the uninitiated. But the hard edges of reality were only a small part of our lives then, and growing up was more a matter of finding those edges than simply coming to accept them. Though I was not aware of the necessity at the time, I eventually discovered that I had had parents, but that they were killed when I was quite young. Even then, I felt the loss only insofar as I understood that other children possessed something that I did not. To be fair, I truly never wanted for family. I grew up in a world of adults, all of whom were my aunt or uncle somebody, in that casual sense that the title is granted to imply closeness without establishing a specific relationship with a child who has no need or understanding of such things. There was always Uncle Michael, Gray, Uncle Alan, but because of the theater, there were always great quantities of uncles and aunts who came and went as the bill changed. And because the requirements of one play and the next were different, I found that my family included every hue, shade, and gradation of humanity. There were none of those labels to me, just aunts and uncles. And they could do the most wondrous things: dance, sing, play the piano, laugh and cry without meaning it, Gray and I sat with Uncle Michael through rehearsals and openings, hits and bombs. I saw my aunts and uncles undergo miraculous changes in the way they behaved and looked and treated one another, and then returned to themselves at the appointed time. And I grew up with no illusions about the theater, only life. The first play that I remember as such was a production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I actually appeared as one of the no-neck monsters, and I think remember the play only because it marked my stage debut. The experience sticks with me not because of the terror it struck in my young soul. Indeed, I had spent so much time in theaters that nothing seemed more natural to me than standing before a crowd of people to speak my part. But because it was the first time I realized what a play was, that there was a plot and a point to be made, and that the performers were trying to simulate real life, to behave as real people would. It was not enough for Uncle Michael that I merely be pushed onto the stage to sing Skinamarink, or that I run across the stage with a sparkler at the appointed time. He was determined that I understand the play and my part in it. "Scott!" I heard Uncle Michael call. "It's time!" "Now pay attention," Gray said, brushing my hair. "This is très important to your uncle." "Oui, oui, Gray," I said, struggling to get away from his preening grasp. "Donnez-le-moi." "Hold still," Gray said gently. "No French. He doesn't understand and it makes him crazy." "Oui, I mean yes," I said. "Scott!" Uncle Michael screamed. "Gray! For Christ's sake, where the hell is everybody?" "In here!" Gray shouted. "Allons, run along, Scott." I rose and ran to the door. Then, with a more solemn gait, I walked down the hall. I loved my uncle, but he could be a forbidding man. At home he was easy and fun, but when there was business to be handled, or the topic was très important, he became another person, the way the actors at the theater did when the curtain went up. I had seen him become this other person at the theater with the actors when things were going badly, and with Uncle Bill Stockbridge on occasion when he arrived with papers for Uncle Michael, and with me on such occasions as the time that I brought the hose in the living room to water the potted plants. So, as I approached the door to his den, I was not entirely sure if the curtain was up or down. "There you are," he said, catching sight of me through the open doors. "Come on in and sit down." I obeyed, sitting stiffly beside him on the small sofa. "How's it going, pal?" he asked. I shrugged. "You look lousy," he said. "Underwear on backwards?" I laughed. "That's better," he said. "Let's talk about the play." "Okay." "Now the most important part first," he said, putting his hands on my shoulders and looking into my face. "Do you really want to do this? Either way's okay with me." "I'm sure," I said, trying to sound serious and grown up. "Scott," he said, letting go of me and reaching for a cigarette, "acting is work. Hard work. It doesn't seem that way to you and me because we've been there and we take things for granted when they're around all the time. Like me being your uncle," he said, lighting the cigarette. "I'm around all the time and we have fun together, but I'm still responsible to see you have food and a home and that you go to the doctor when you're sick. Do you see?" "I guess," I said, not really seeing. "With acting, you are responsible to the play and the other actors. See, a play is really just a story in a book like the ones that Gray and I read to you. But with a play, you and the other actors pretend to be the people in the story, and you act the story out. Now, how good you are depends on how real you make your part of the story. You have to make people think you really are that person, not Scott anymore, and the other actors do the same thing. And if you all do a very good job, then to the audience, the play looks real, and it's a success. So, let's talk about this story and the little boy you're pretending to be, okay?" "Okay." "Now, this is a story about selfishness. Selfishness is when you are thinking only about yourself and not about anyone else. Remember your birthday and how you got upset because you didn't want anyone else to have any of your cake or the candy or favors?" I nodded solemnly, remembering the ghastly thing, and running to my room and crying myself to sleep, feeling oddly betrayed because neither Gray nor Uncle came to comfort me. "Well, the feeling you had at the party was selfishness, and this play is about a whole family who felt that way. They were all very rich because the grandfather had worked hard and made a lot of money. But now the grandfather is going to die and all the aunts and uncles want the money. What the people in the story don't realize is that what they really want is love, not the money. And you get that, and to get that love, they all pretend to love the other people in the family. But the only way to get real love is to give it. And since it isn't real love they're giving, it's not real love that they get back. Uncle Bob and Aunt Susan will play your mother and father. And in the story, they try to get the grandfather to love them because of you. And the little boy you play tries to get his mother and father to love him by doing what they want him to do. kind of like you doing this play because a little part of you thinks that I'll love you more if you do, he said, looking straight at me. I felt my ears grow hot and red in my embarrassment. It felt as if Uncle Michael could read my mind, and I felt hot waves of guilt welling up into tears in my eyes. I looked away. He left me to squirm in the silence for an eternity. He rose and crossed to his desk and sat behind it, lit a cigarette, and then blew a shaft of smoke into the autumn sun cut out of the sky by the window behind him. "Two things," he said at last. "First, and most important, don't feel bad if a little part of you is doing this play to please me. We always do things to please the people we love. But I will love you just as much if you don't do the play. I want you to do what you want to do. I love you for who you are. That's real love, okay?" "Yes, Uncle," I said. "I really do want to." "Good man," he said. "Come give me a hug." I ran to the safety of his lap, and he held me there, caught with him in the smoke, in the warm shaft of light, the rest of the world hazy and dark around us. "All right," he said, perching me on his knee. "The second part is harder to understand, but très important." I smiled in response. "You must try very hard to remember that feeling that you just had when I told you your secret. Those feelings were real, and that's the way the people in this story feel. Your job is to convince the audience that you feel that way during the play. And to do it, you must know how it really feels and pretend you really feel that way. That is acting, and it's the work of art, to capture real human feelings. Can you do that?" "I'll try," I said, not wanting him to catch me again. "Good," he said, lifting me down. "Now go and play. Gray will help you with your part tomorrow. It's up to you to make it real." And so I came to be in my first play. Now that I have blurred remembrances of the tension and triumph that are always backstage, and of the tears in Uncle Michael's eyes as he embraced me after the opening night. But mostly I have the memory of my first acting lesson. It comes to me often, oddly enough, as my first brush with reality. For as Uncle Michael would say, good acting is just like real life. All right, well, that's a taste. I hope it's a good taste. There's a lot more. As I said earlier, if you click on either the tab above me or any of these links below me, it'll take you to places where you can be a part of the whole Say Uncle experience and our whole effort to start publishing electronically. So, Merry Christmas from all of us at Christmasville, and thanks so much for watching.